What is going on, everyone? My name is Jared Haas, and welcome to the best seat of the track. This weekend, we're at Bristol Dirt for Easter weekend. Joining us on the best seat of the track is none other than our dirt expert, Bryan Davis Keith. Bryan, it is a pleasure to have you on this show, and I want to discuss about some comments that Kyle Larson made last week. You can watch the video on our YouTube page. Is that Kyle Larson was trying to compare Bristol to more of a natural dirt track. What is the difference between a natural dirt track like Knoxville and Eldora to a Bristol track where they just dump a bunch of dirt on it?
Well, this year, one of the things that I think Larson brought up that's important to mention this year, so they did the banking that fans are going to see at Bristol this year is different from last year. They did progressive banking this year in an attempt to try to improve the racing product on the track. And Larson also made some comments that the surface this year seemed to hold up better. It didn't chunk as much. It had less character, is the phrase that he used. I don't know how much, if any, difference it made watching the super late models race at Bristol. And Bristol is kind of its own unique animal, not just because it's temporary dirt, but because it's banked so freaking much. It's a half mile that's banked like a 3-story building. Dirt in the dirt ranks, a half mile is a long racetrack. And what we saw when the super late models race there was essentially, it was like an engine dyno. Like it was pretty much get your car as straight as you can and don't lift is essentially what the racers were doing there. So I think Bristol is it's hard to try to come up with any type of dirt comparison to it just for that reason. It's so fast, it's so tall, and it's something too where nobody has a notebook. I mean, it's only the second time in 20 years we've had dirt on Bristol. And again, they changed the banking this year. So that's probably where I'm coming from with that. Like when we had the Bristol Dirt Nationals 2 weeks ago, we had Kyle Larson and we had a lot of the big national heavy hitters in dirt late model racing. None of that really mattered. It was a lot about horsepower, and hoping your car didn't blow a right front tire, which unfortunately we saw a lot of that too.
Yeah, it's not really compared to the dirt tracks of, these dirt racers, and that's why you're not seeing a lot of these dirt experts in the Cup Series race. Like, we had road course ringers about 20 years ago. But I want to note something interesting to kind of explain the process of these stages, kind of similar to the Clash of where we have heats. Can we go over what involves going into the feature for the Bristol Dirt race?
Well, if I understand it correctly, it's going to be the same thing as last year where we have a short field. So everyone's going to start the feature. And that is, again, something very, very different from dirt late model racing in the sense that a lot of the time when you have these big time, at least at like the super late model ranks, the sprint car ranks, when you have a major league race like this, you normally have more cars in the field than are going to make the feature. And that's kind of what makes the preliminary program as intense as it does. It's like there are consequences. You don't make it out of your heat, you're going to a B main. You don't make it out of a B main unless you have a serious provisional, you're going home. That won't be the case here. For the NASCAR guys, I mean, it's not like these races aren't without consequence. It's going to be the first time they're on a track. They're going to have to figure out some of the new stuff that we've got with the car this year. It's a new car. It hasn't been on dirt before. They're going to have the mud flaps to deal with this year. We had the visibility issue with mud hitting the windshields last year. That's all stuff they have to figure out. Obviously, if you tear your car up in a preliminary, you've got to get it fixed before you get it out for the feature. But the counter to that is this is a long race. Like NASCAR's feature is a lot longer than anything that like a super late model driver or a sprint car driver is normally going to see over the course of the year. So it's something where, yes, you're going to have the stage breaks. Like it's going to be like, essentially you're going to have many features going on throughout the big feature, but it's a lot. I don't want to say a lot less urgency, but there's less urgency when you have 100, 150 laps to get to the front, as opposed to it being a Saturday night 30 lap special. Because at that point, if you're starting 15th to 20th, you don't have a choice. You got to go. And you're not really, I don't know that you're necessarily going to see that in our Cup race on Sunday.
Yeah, with those 150 laps, you have a little bit of time compared to 30 laps too. I want to transition to kind of what a hidden storyline, to say the least. But last weekend, Chase Elliott started on the pole for Martinsville, looked like the dominant car. All three of his Hendrick Motorsports teams have already won this early in the season within less than 10 races. Chase Elliott had a pit stop, fell back to a 10th place finish. I'm wondering, what does there need to be fixed for Chase Elliott? I think it's just something of finishing out the race, just not having the bad luck get in the way of a bad pit stop and keeping that track position, especially what we saw at Martinsville. When you held the lead, you're still good there. And I think running that truck race for him is going to help him. But what do you think needs to happen for Elliott to finally find victory lane?
Well, it's interesting you bring this up because I talked to your partner, D. Siegel, last year going into Bristol Dirt. And the story last year was Kevin Harvick. Kevin Harvick got off to a slow start last year. It's not like, in this day and age where the top 16 is all that matters, it really doesn't matter how slow to start the year. For Elliott, Hendrick's got speed, and I'm not necessarily surprised to see Chase struggling a little bit just because it's such a different car. The previous generation car, he had that thing hooked up. When he showed up, he was going to be fast. I'm not necessarily surprised that he's not taking off like a rocket ship with this new car day one, because it's obviously not the same thing that they drove last year. Bristol Dirt, truthfully, might be exactly what he needs in the sense that it's such a variable. If anything, we may have more unknowns going into Bristol Dirt this weekend than we did last year. The track is different. We've been over that with the banking already. The car is different. I mean, everybody's learning the car, and now you're throwing it onto a surface it's never been on before in a configuration that nobody's raced it before. And going into that weekend last year too, Joey Logano was one of about 20 Cup drivers last year that tried running some dirt ahead of time, trying to get a handle on things. He was respectable, but he certainly wasn't the guy saying that's the guy he's going to win. Chase Elliott, I think, it's the exact same boat here. That race is such a variable, depending on what we see with track conditions, depending on what we see on how the car actually performs on there. It's no stretch at all to say he wins this weekend. Even though his biggest claim to fame in dirt is flipping in the Chili Bowl, he very well could win this weekend, and it would not be a surprise at all. So if there's any storyline to this, don't panic. He's in a Hendrick car. Hendrick is by no means out to lunch. We're still talking about a guy that finished, what you said, 10th at Martinsville in Crimea River. He scored a top 10.
Well, when your teammates are winning, that's kind of a little bit, I want to finally get that win for Chase Elliott. I think that's probably why there's a little bit of urgency. We'll wait and see on Sunday. And speaking of picks, we get to do our favorite segment, having our picks to win the race. And let me show the standings from last weekend. Brian, I had Davey Siegel, as you mentioned, on the show last weekend. He picked Ryan Blaney, solid fourth place finish. But I picked up William Byron, picked on the momentum of him winning the Truck Series race, and he won. So I have a lead again, double against the at-track reporters too. I'm going to start with you again. It might be the lottery pick to try to pick the winner of this race. Make sure to go to our YouTube page and select from our poll who's going to win. If you don't see the top four from last year, comment somebody else, but don't comment Richard Petty. Brian, who do you have winning here at Bristol?
I am going with lightning striking twice. I'm going with Joey Logano to defend his dirt crown. I think what we've seen, and I mean, we saw it again this year with the Clash, you put him in one of these variable races, he rises to the top. And I think, like we said, this is not Bristol round two from where I'm sitting. This is a whole new iteration of Bristol Dirt. Even though we're 2 years into it at this point, I think he's going to rise to the top and prove up for it again.
So you're sticking with Penske. I'm going to go with somebody that we talked about last weekend. Same logic that I used kind of in Martinsville, a momentumous pick. Like I said, he'll probably do well in the Truck Series race, translate it over to the Cup Series race. I'm picking Chase Elliott. I think he's due for a win. It's just something that, experience matters, and especially with this consolidated practice and qualifying, extra track time is critical. So, Brian, it is a pleasure to have you on the show. And from everyone here at Frontstretch.com, make sure to subscribe and have a great race weekend.